last 7 years. It's about our relationship with law enforcement through the history of the United States of America.
Yeah, and so I think both of you raised up some incredible points. And I think that whenever you're having conversations, if we don't have empathy and understanding, so where I grew up at, and Frank, you know me, where I grew up at, it was not a great relationship with police. Like, our church has gotten awards from the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, Indianaland Police Department, the things that we do. So we respect police, right? We respect law. But also, just like within ministry, you got some people who shouldn't be involved, who are predators.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we need to call them out just as much. Also, and you and I have discussed this multiple times. You made the comment that Bull Connor and those guys in the South were Democrats and the Republicans freed the slaves. And we know historically there's been a massive shift in those parties. Yeah. And like, you actually write about it. Can you comment about that?
Yeah, I want you to finish. I don't want to cut you off. I was just thinking the ideological shift. The spirit of racism is alive and well. Doesn't matter what party it goes under. The truth is, Lerone Bennett wrote this book about Abraham Lincoln called Forced into Glory. Whether he's a Republican or a Democrat, he, in essence, works to end slavery to save the Union. Lincoln says he doesn't anymore care about the issue of slavery or people being enslaved insofar as it's not attached to the saving of the Union. It was not a moral issue, in other words. When you fast forward and you come to, let's say, 62 or thereabout, 64, Dr. King is involved with these sit-ins. And Dr. King's, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his father, Martin Luther King Sr., is one of the lead pastors in the city of Atlanta. In fact, he leads a coalition of pastors who are ready to vote for Nixon. He's Republican, as it were, in that regard. And then King gets snatched away in the middle of the night from the jail and taken to this remote prison, and nobody's doing anything about it. Robert Kennedy gets the information. He calls his brother, who's on the campaign trail, says, you need to call Coretta Scott. This is a true story. So JFK, who's running for president, picks up the phone and calls Coretta and simply expresses his condolences. Nixon doesn't do a thing. Then they start to make calls and moves to get King brought out of this remote prison and into the light, able to contact his wife and able to contact his father. It's in that moment that RFK and JFK captured the attention of Martin King Sr., who's one of the most influential pastors in Atlanta. It's at that point that that group of pastors moved from Nixon to Kennedy. And we know later on, as a result, Kennedy, really more so Johnson, delivers some marquee legislation to benefit and to help African-American people. But I want to be clear, Black people were not locked and sold on the Democratic ticket at that time. It was who demonstrated care and concern for one of our key leaders and for our personhood. And in that moment, that blue book got made. The Democratic Party got that blue book made, and that blue book went to churches and Black people all around the country. And that, along with Richard J. Daley, delivered an election through Cook County, in fact, for JFK. And a lot of Black people haven't looked back since.
I want you to hear what Pastor Date says here. And I hope that Frank Turek really well. What he says is that Lincoln and his abolition of slavery was not a witness of Jesus, but merely just a politician of America. Then he shares the story about how Dr. King Sr., from the arrest of Dr. King Jr., helped turn Black people from Republican to Democrat. But notice the reason: because the Republicans did not understand what it meant to be a witness of Jesus in crucial times of the Black experience, all was how to be politicians for America. And I think that that is the big problem with white evangelicalism when it comes to structural systemic injustice, structural racism, is they are forgetting that their chief responsibility is to be witnesses for Jesus, but instead they want the chief role to be politicians of America. They are leaving their chief responsibility just to latch on to their desires for a chief role. They are leaving the responsibility of a kingdom that they are supposed to belong to get the role in a Babylon that they are supposed to be escaping. Just remember and hold on to that thought.
Well, I've heard.
And Turek has no response to that. He has no kind of rebuttal to that. Because he understands that it hits on the point of something that he may, I don't want to assume motive, might not even care about because he's.
So let's move on to number three.
Right.
Number three. What biblical or moral concerns do you believe Christians on the other side are rightly trying to protect, even if you disagree with their political conclusions? So what they're rightly trying to protect, even if you disagree with them.
I want the apologist scholar to go first.
Okay. All right.
Well, I did a little research on why people are voting Democrat. So here's what they say. And these are all good causes. They're concerned, number one, about the economy. And they're really close. It's like 38%, 37%. So they're all about the same. Concerned about the economy, concerned about healthcare, democracy, immigration, and abortion. And obviously for Democrats, abortion means
Sure. Yeah.
they want to have abortion. So I think they're also interested in protecting entitlements and creating more equity among identity groups, although it's further down the road. Some are worried about climate change, and I think many of them want to oppose Trump. And there are some things you should oppose Trump on. So, I mean, it's a good corrective, okay?
Yeah. Can I just pause there?
Mm-hmm.
I think you saying that is very important for a lot of people to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That whenever a person loses the capacity to be prophetic,
Absolutely,
you have become a sycophant, where you're just a cheerleader. So I appreciate you saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you saying that as well.
So yeah, I think, and maybe we could agree on this, Charlie, I don't know, same with you, Derwin, that I think not in not all cases, because some of this is worldview related, but a lot of people want the same ends. They just disagree on how to get there, the means, right? Now you mentioned LBJ before.
Right.
Turns out that the Great Society has not fixed poverty. We're still at the same 14% poverty rate that we were after spending over $1 trillion. And one of the faults of it, well-intended, but obviously the result hasn't been good, illegitimacy, not just in the Black community, but in the white community as well, has skyrocketed. In the white community, it's about 27% now. In the Black community, it's 69%. So we have an entire...
I just want you to know that there are multiple reasons why there is a difference between 27% and 69%, because the history of the practices that produce illegitimacy have been in the Black community far longer than they were allowed to touch the white community.
Generation of being brought up without a father. And it's because it's incentivized by welfare, which gives a mother more money if a father's not in the house for every child she has. Now, I don't know how to fix that. It's hard to fix at this point.
Well, again,
Wait, hold on a second.
Yeah, sure.
Are you finished?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
I just want to
I'm
make
so
sure you
sorry.
got
Yeah.
No, and I want to say thank you too for leveling critique, even in an acknowledgement, because I do think that that's important. What you said. So me and my kids were going to play Monopoly the other night. We've done this before, and Claire, my daughter, wants to play because it's a long game. It's a good time with us. Kiersey, not so much. My experiment with them is this. We play Monopoly. You know, every player gets $1,500 to start Monopoly. I take no money. I just wait until my next, I go around gold, then I get $200. So I'm in the game with everybody else. But the truth is, I don't last very long. Can't buy property, don't get any land, just going around until somebody puts me out of the game. I
This is
think
a great
it's
illustration.
historically unfair to look at a people group who descend from ancestors who labored and fought to build this nation in the way that they did. And then, in the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., were liberated to the lands of starvation. We had no economic floor, as it were, to pull us up. Now, however, 40 acres and a mule was promised and was never delivered, radically impacted the economic landscape of African-American people. Now, you could get some people go, I could start Monopoly without any money and make it. So you have your Michael Jordans, you have your Oprah Winfrey's, your LeBron Jameses, you have Bob Johnson, people who actually are anomalies in one sense who come off. But to compare the need of African-American people who do have a unique disenfranchisement story in this nation to people who do not,
Right.
is not right. I do think that no other people group were brought here in the way we were and then were left without an economic floor after all of the labor we exercised. I will say this about LBJ, because a lot didn't pan out. And I'm glad he did what he did, he and JFK. My brother, my oldest brother, was born in like 1972, is the first person in my family to be born with the fullest United States citizenship possible. The opportunity to go to school, where he wanted to buy property in whatever neighborhood he wanted, the opportunity to vote. So you're talking about my oldest brother being the first generation of our family.
And I'm older than him.
So you weren't even born necessarily with some of the.
Now, mind you, that's only 54 years old, right? From 72 to where are we in now? 2026, right? That's how long Black people, how little Black people have had the right to be a part of the full experience of America.
Or depending upon when you were born.
71.
So, but you see how recent that is. The fact that Black people have made it is a miracle in America. The fact that we have survived, the fact that we have kept the family unit together. So I hear the stories of illegitimacy and I think to myself, it's a wonder we still got a family unit. We were picked off left and right. Families torn apart, torn asunder. Well before Nixon or Johnson or Reagan, there's a long history. So I just want to say that hysteria is grounded in something. Again, and something real. And what I want to do is kind of like, you hear somebody go, you get on a plane and you see a Black pilot and you go, that's DE&I. That's one person's experience. I get on a plane and I see a Black pilot because I'm connected to the Tuskegee work. And I go, that must be an awesome man. That must be an amazing woman to have gotten to this point in life. Black people see our American experience and our story radically different from those who tried to structure policy and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think seeing our story through either one of those lenses is both wrong. And what I mean by that is I think when I see a Black pilot, if I automatically say that person is amazing, or if a white person sees a Black pilot and they automatically say DEI, we have a disregard for the facts because of the emotionalism of our preference. And what happens is if we allow one another to have a disregard for the facts because the emotionalism of our preference in any situation, then we give a pass for that to be an ethic by which we live by in this system where we are trying to find the best way of how we live together in harmony. So I think that ethic on both sides is completely wrong, because I don't know what hands up that Black pilot has had. I don't know how good that Black pilot is. I don't know who they undercut to get where they were. I don't know their proximity to whiteness to get where. I don't know anything. What I would hope is that the airline is wise enough and smart enough to put qualified, licensed, well-trained, and well-vetted individuals in the cockpit. And I would like to judge them off of the fact that they are just a pilot and not necessarily black or white. Now, when I get into their story, if I want to hear a little bit more about their story and I hear a little bit more about what they've made it through or what they've done on both sides, then I can be able to talk about what kind of pilot.
By the way, so did I.
Yeah.
There go Frank. There go Frank again. By the way, so did I. By the way, me too. He doesn't. This is where I'm saying Frank Turek, he loses us in this conversation. He has no depth of the intellectual discourse in the history of what he is talking about when it comes to race and systemic issues. And we believe because he has this bright spot in one part of the academy, that bright spot transfers over to this part of the academy. And right here, Frank sounds no better than the average white male that is scared of disenfranchisement and the loss of his privilege. What kind of comment is it? And mind you, this pastor is Frank's friend. He knows his story. And as soon as he hears somebody talk about a struggle, he has to add on, so did I. So did I, Derwin. Like, the struggle to get a doctorate and to be proven in a room is not, so did I. Seriously? That's his stance. So if he does that to a friend, what do you think his thought is about the possibility of those who have had to work harder? Now, mind you, I know I just gave the illustration of a black pilot and not seeing that, but the difference between this situation is Pastor Derwin is explaining his story, and Frank is like, but it doesn't matter. So do I. It's a crazy dismissive posture that he carries throughout this whole conversation.
Yeah. A little bit differently though, Frank. Mm-hmm. And let me say this. I have found that it's not a personal attack against your work ethic if someone says we have had historical injustices. Respectfully, it would be good to move yourself from the center and go, man, I'm sorry. So when I step into rooms, oftentimes with white pastors, I'm by far the smartest, the most theologically grounded, and it's the hardest to be heard. Mm-hmm. It is utterly amazing. And I sit there and I watch and I listen. It's been happening for years. As I'll hear guys speaking, I'll go, oh my gosh, this is elementary stuff. They haven't been to school.
For those of you who don't know, that's what we call the play smart to be smart. We have to play like other white men in the room are just as smart as us, so we can then show them that we are actually skilled and smart in a thing. Why? Because the admission to the room is not qualification. The admission to many of these rooms is whiteness.
But to be heard, I had to have a greater influence. And you know this, Frank. You're old enough to remember when they said black people couldn't play quarterback. You remember that? Like you do, right? Like yeah. And so
prior to like Warren Moon, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, like, and so, but even so, extrapolate that. What I try to do as a pastor is for our white brothers and sisters, primarily white men, is it's not an attack against a person's character. So my father-in-law, he's gone on to be with the Lord now, wonderful man. He, 6th grade education. He would have dreams and he'd build these lathes to build lathes to do log cabins. He'd started a business, phenomenal, grew up dirt poor. And so we would talk about certain things. He's like, well, son, I just don't get it. I grew up poor and I worked hard. And I said, Dad, no one's ever said you didn't work hard. The color of your skin was never a disadvantage for you. You could go to the University of Alabama if you wanted to. you could get a job if you wanted to. People, my ancestors at your time couldn't do that. So no one's saying you didn't work hard. No one's not saying you're not valuable. What we're saying is there was a disadvantage, and we know that historically. Right now, in Indian land, South Carolina, where we are, can you imagine us three in the same room in 1960? I've had people here who are part of our church, white and black, who are older, going, I never thought I would walk into a church where black people, white people, Asian people, Latino people are in the same place in Indian land, South Carolina. They were like, that would have never happened in 1990. You would have had a cross burning here. So as your brother and as your friend, and as someone who has family members that are white, it's never an attack against a person's work ethic. So if I'm suffering, we don't have to compare suffering. We can go, man, that must really, really be hard. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, I agree completely.
Okay, awesome.
What I wanted to ask Charlie was, because I think everything you said is absolutely true. It's true. The question is, where do we go from here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And where do we take it from
Absolutely.
here?
Yeah.
And that's the question. I think the welfare state has failed, and I think it has perverse implications, unintended implications, or unintended consequences, I should say, particularly with illegitimacy. Both in the only community it hasn't really affected is the Asian community for some reason. They're still at 12% illegitimacy. So the question is, how do we go from here without engaging in reverse racism?
Here's Frank with bad statistics again. He judges the failure of the welfare state through illegitimacy, right? That was a hard one coming out 11:40 at night. But he judges there and says, I think the welfare state has failed. But I guarantee you, if we got rid of the welfare state, that most statistics say that white people account for over 50% of the welfare state, right? Over 50% of the welfare state when it comes to SNAP benefits, when it comes to overall public statistics, overall public assistance, they are over 50% of the welfare state. Some statistics will put them as low as 35, but most of them have them higher to 50. Frank and his people in policy would not know what to do if that population of 50% of white people were no longer given benefits. Because now Frank has to lose his place of classism that his status has given him, and his class level will now be responsible for supporting those who are in their class who were once on the welfare state. I don't think that Frank is really thinking this through. I think that he's just thinking about those numbers of illegitimate children because he is participating in what Date stated earlier, a crotch Christianity that he cannot see further than anything and how we legislated. Like he can't see. His whole argument for the welfare state is that it's not giving us more fathers in the home, which I think is a valid concern. But if that is the full argument, then we have a very, very serious
How do we do that?
issue.
Well, can I ask something real quick? Amen, because I've seen it. I think for us, racism is different than prejudice. Racism means there's a group of people who actually have power over a whole nother group. Prejudice is more individual. And so case in point, if we are in Greece, people who make up the majority have power over other, but there can be individual prejudices. So I think that's really important. And we as Christians should always say, no, I want to treat you the way I want to be treated. But culturally, for me, I don't have the power to create laws, culture that are going to affect mass people. And I think that's a very important distinction for all of us, the difference
Yeah.
between racism and cultural power and prejudice.
Okay, so
101.
from a societal perspective, then you're talking about racism, society, systematic racism. Is
Yes.
that what you mean? Okay, so the question, what does that mean from a law perspective? Are there laws that are different for blacks, whites, and Asians, or does the law? Are we for race neutral laws?
Well, I think, and thank you again for this conversation. I love it. I think that there are some things that are more de jure
Frank,
and more
boy,
de
I
facto.
tell you.
Some things that are racially and systematically in our nation, it may not be stated in law per se,
Okay.
but it happens in practice. I'll give you an example. So in 1954, I think it was, Brown versus the Board of Education is decided. Technically, legally, it's supposed to be the end of segregation in education and public education. Well, what it ended up doing was giving birth to a massive network of private education systems that still privileged racially certain people groups and economically certain other people groups. So
that's why I'm for school choice.
But so that in some parts of Illinois now,
school choice does not
schools are
end that.
more segregated in 2026 than they were in 1964 or 1974.
That's why we ought to have school choice, and the Democrats are against that.
But let me say this, because this hits at the welfare thing, which our Lord said, the poor you'll have with you always. I can't go against our Lord, but I know that America could do a lot more to eliminate poverty. And one of the ways that we can work toward that is by providing quality education that isn't based upon where a kid is born and how much money a kid's family makes. So I'll give you Chicago again as an example. Years ago, the state of Illinois would give a certain amount of money per kid to a local school district. All right. So if you got 1,000 kids, you get certain amount of money per head. But it was according to property taxes. So just go with me here. If you lived in a wealthy suburb, which is another form of redlining based on property taxes, your schools got more money per pupil, which funded books, teachers, facilities, extracurricular activities. And if you lived in a poorer neighborhood, it didn't work out for you that much. So you get a kid who's born 25 miles south of another kid who's born 25 miles north, and they have two completely different formative years of educational experience. That directly translates into the types of opportunities they'll have, the type of further educational opportunities they have, the type of economic mobility that they will have. But we've, in essence, created a caste system in one sense. We're on our way to doing that, where we perpetuate poverty.
That's a good analysis. And that's why, I know it's going to sound radical, I don't think we ought to have public education. I think it all ought to be private. Why should we send our kids to a school that doesn't teach the scriptures? Why should we send our kids to a school
But what if they're not Christians though, Frank?
Well, but their parents can decide where to send them.
So
just give the money to the parents and let the parents decide.
I mean, where's the money coming from?
What's that?
Where you said give the money to the parents and where's that money coming from for the parents?
Well, you can still use the tax system to grant the parents an equal amount of money. Now we're talking policy now. Now we're down in the weeds on policy. But if you want to equalize that, give the parents the money that they can use at whatever school they want to send their kids to.
So
it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? This is a simple math problem. Frank just forgot how to do math, and he forgot how the free market works, right? This is why I hate when we talk to average white men who are not thinking through, and that's what Frank is actually presenting as right now, an average white man who is not thinking through. If I give a school choice voucher, and Pastor Dates just talked about this in the state of Illinois, where they were giving vouchers for people to go to school, but the vouchers was based on the tax income and what was being pulled in from the taxes from those neighborhoods. If I'm paying a higher tax, then I get a higher amount of money back, right? But let's just say that everybody gets the same amount of tax money. All I have to do to continue segregation in my school is raise the tuition amount. I raise the tuition amount past the amount that most people who I do not want to be in my school will be able to afford based off of the money that the government is giving them. So say, for instance, we have some private schools right now in the city of Philadelphia that are charging $50,000 for an elementary school education. If I have 3 children in my house, do you think the government is going to give me $150,000 per household to send my child to this school? Even if the government gives me $150,000 per household, you know what they're going to do at that school that doesn't want my child to go there? They're going to raise their tuition to $75,000 a year. Right? Because they're going to understand that some people can have the $50,000 voucher and then pay the extra $25,000 on top so their child doesn't have to go to school with whatever class of children they don't want them to go to. School choice is not the answer, Frank. Why? Because we live in a free market where the government cannot force a private school to keep their tuition locked, and the government cannot force a private school to accept the individuals in their school that they do not want to accept, either because they did not meet the criteria of their entrance policy, or because they have it set up in a way where they don't want that kind of student. Frank, it doesn't work. And you're giving us these juvenile ideas because you want to stay on your political side of the aisle and you want to prove the other side of the political aisle to be wrong. And you're not even thinking through the solutions that you are offering. And that right there, my friend, is someone who is not concerned about being a witness of the kingdom, but more concerned about not even being a politician of America, but the politician of his side of America. Do you see what we sacrifice? We leave our brains at the door when we're discussing this kind of stuff. It amazes me that a man that can be so bright in certain areas of life where he does not get to talk about his whiteness, he does not get to talk about his political preference. He can be very bright there, but when he gets to talk about his whiteness and his political preference, he sounds just as basic, as entry level than any other white male that I would sit down and talk to. If this is the brightest of the brightest that we have to offer for this conversation, oh, America, how are we going to make it forward to anywhere? Having conversations like this that offer such a juvenile perspective to a complex issue that needs to be fixed through telling humans that they cannot X people out because of what they think about them on a racial level. And he talks about he's for competition. Are you kidding me?
Oh, I want to make sure I'm hearing you carefully. You're saying that tax money, the government should then give the people that tax money, then the parents can choose on.
In fact, by the way, there's a program, part of the big beautiful bill, that $1,700 tax credit goes to every individual who can then take that money, give it to an SGO, a scholarship granting organization, so kids can get an education at, say, a private school.
Yeah. What?
I want Frank to tell me what private school he knows charges $1,700 of tuition for a full year. I want him to find me one private school in America that charges $1,700 of tuition for a full year. Because that tax credit is not $1,700 a month, even if it's $1,700 a month. I want you to tell me what percentage of private schools kids can go to for $1,700 a month that pays full tuition. I want Frank to do that research. Because if Frank does that research, he would realize how idiotic even that clause in the big beautiful bill is.
What about by way of illustration, and then I'm gonna make a thought, and then I wanna move to something else. So I was a football coach, and we live in a part of town called Ballantyne. Like you and I live in very nice areas. Mm-hmm. So my son's school, beautiful artificial turf and locker rooms. we played a school called West Charlotte, Brothers in the Hood. You know where their locker room was? It was behind the stadium. We saw them sitting down. They didn't have one. So Cam Newton and a few other Carolina Panthers took their own money and built them a locker room and state of the art. So at Ballantyne, I've seen them get their field at Audrey Kell High School. I've seen them get their field replaced 3 times. Schools with lesser tax, we would go to their schools and play. It was like playing in a cow pasture. So why not, if we can send rockets to the moon, why not hold schools more accountable, to pay teachers better, and give world-class education?
Competition improves everything. And we don't have competition in our secondary education system.
So competition even with inequality. So then that means that you just pretty much said your prior point was null and void. If you are going to build competition off inequality, it doesn't change the system that we have now. We have competition with serious gaps of inequality. And so his policy doesn't even make sense to him. How do I compete with somebody that can just outspend me? Like how do I do that? That's not true competition. I hope he plays this back and he understands. And this is why I wish there was somebody else that was sitting across from him, because Pastor Dates already gave the concession earlier that I'm not debating. And a part of the reason why he may not be debating, he could have 100 reasons and why he's not doing it. But I want somebody sitting across from Frank who understands the ineffective concepts of the policy that he's putting forward. And I want him to be reminded that the policy that he is putting forward is coming from one of the most ineffective governments that we are actually watching right now. This is one of the most ineffective governments that we've ever had in the United States of America. And he has the audacity, the unmitigated gall. This conversation was only a week ago. I don't know when it was recorded, and it was only released a week ago. He has the audacity, the unmitigated gall to offer us policy and legislation talking points from this administration who is taking America down the toilet drain right now. That's an objective fact. It's an objective fact that we can't get out of a war in Iran. It's an objective fact that the economy is going through these shifts that are plunging the poor lower and lower and are making the richer, richer, richer. It's an objective fact that there's grifting going on. That's not subjective at all. And he is offering me those talking points like they do something for me if I don't have white skin and I'm not allowed in another part of the game. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm not asking for charity here, Frank. I'm just asking for honesty. I'm just asking for some actual foundational integrity in your intellectualism that is bringing these points to the forefront. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking you to give us anything. We're just asking you not to BS us. And that right now, my friend, I don't know if you were doing that intentionally because of what you were trying to protect, or if you were doing that unintentionally because of what you were trying to protect. But I know one thing, this ain't it. Frank, this just ain't it, Frank. I mean, there's so much more that we want from you, but I think on this topic, the only reason why I want to hear from you again is to get somebody to push against you a little more than Pastor Dates was engaged to do in this conversation or decided to do in this conversation. But my boy, this ain't it, Frank. Jeez Louise.
If you gave the money to the parents to decide where they sent their kids, those schools would suddenly get a lot better.
Yeah, I definitely think that.
But the parents aren't the deciders. The school admission people are the deciders. So if you give the parents the money and they go to a school and the school finds a way to tell them no, what's your argument then, Frank?
There is a truth and a part to that. I also think that we can demand more and expect more, because it's pretty amazing. The schools internationally, the education in America is quite low compared to international.
Can I say something to this real
go
quick?
ahead, sir.
Because there are multiple pathways that we think about. In Chicago, the state actually created this problem. It could fix it. In New Trier, in Winnetka, at the New Trier High School, is reportedly the #1 high school, public high school in the state of Illinois, could be funded and financed and supported by the state of Illinois. Why can't we have a New Trier in every neighborhood? We can. We can have master degree teachers in every neighborhood. We could have Olympic-sized swimming pools in every neighborhood. We could have cafes with quality food in every neighborhood. We could have first-class facilities in every neighborhood. Parents didn't make that choice. This is a matter of, if we want
Pastor
equity,
Dates.
equality, which are not always the same thing, then we can create the same quality of school, high level quality of school, to be in every neighborhood. They don't just have to be in the rich ones.
Well, I agree, but I think the best way forward for that is through competition, not through a bureaucratic, monolithic system that really is more about the teachers than the students. I think the teachers unions have been a disgrace to our nation. And I agree with, I want to give as much as possible every student an equal shot at a good education. I don't think public education is the way to do it. But now we're talking policy now.
Yeah. So
You can't give them an equal shot without equal funding. And I think that's the part that Frank keeps looking over. Right now, I will agree with him that schools have become more about giving jobs to teachers than educations to students. But I do think that the way that he is deciding upon his solution is very, very, very linear. And you know what? I don't know from this conversation if Frank can even see the plight of Black people unless he is trying to rid them of being the problem or to solve their problem. Right? Like, he cannot see them in an arena as deserving the same thing as him, because he just called inequality competition. Because until we fix the equality portion, there is no fair competition. Let me give you an illustration, and we're going to hurry up and move. When there is a penalty in a sports game, when there is a flag in football, when there is a foul in basketball, one team has to suffer a consequence for that penalty. That consequence for that penalty then makes the game a game of equality, because they're supposed to call the same call on all individuals. Now, because this is done by humans, it's not always equal. But what I am saying is, when there is a flag, a penalty should be paid or assessed before the game continues. Frank wants the game to continue without there being a penalty for the systemic racism that has been established through white supremacy. And what Pastor Dates is saying to him is, the way that we get back to equality is you gotta fix it, which means that you have to give what is supposed to be given through whatever your penalty should be for the things that were committed, the crimes, the fouls, whatever you want to call them. Frank's saying, no. We don't need to go back there. Let's just put in school choice right now. Well, Frank, I ain't going to have much of choice of schools until we fix the inequality, because the funding given to me is not going to be enough to get into schools that the inequality has helped build the gap for. Frank's not thinking. Frank's not listening. Frank's just talking. Frank's just giving out propaganda. Frank is missing it. Frank is really missing it here. I was so surprised when I saw this. So disappointed. I know. Derwin. I don't use his last name because I don't want to mix him up and give him the last name from Derwin from the game. That's why I'm having Pastor Derwin is having just a hard time like dealing with this, because this is his friend. And he's like, Frank, I thought we talked about this before. Like, Frank, you didn't use the notes. Like, I've been giving you cliff notes about this all the times we sat down at coffee and pancakes, and you're not using the notes. Frank, what's going on? Where are the notes? Frank ain't using the notes. Frank ain't going to pass this test. I can tell you
So
that
let's
right now.
pause here, and I want to go on record for me personally. Transformation Church,